everybody. Welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and look who is back from his precious hunting trip, Jeremiah Sirles. It is time for Tuesday morning left guard, and as you return to humanity, Jeremiah, the Minnesota Vikings are 4-0. Your thoughts?
Just like we all anticipated,
Mhm.
right? Just like we all thought Minnesota would win the North, Tampa goes through the South, Seattle's first place. It's just as we all sat around in August and predicted. We're all just the brilliant talking heads, but it's what I love about the NFL so freaking much. Dude, every single week you're just going into it and you're like, oh, this team's going to get dirt stomped. And you're like, oh my gosh, they won. You're like, man, gut wrencher in Lambeau. Oh, they're up 28-0. Like, it's just the NFL is so glorious in that fact. And are the Vikings the best team in the NFL? They're in the conversation. They're in the conversation for being the best team in the NFL right now from a consistent week in and week out basis, in my opinion.
Okay, so there's a lot of different things that we need to break down. It's overwhelming when you miss a week
I know.
of things to talk about, but why don't we just begin there? How many National Football League franchises would you say right now are better than the Minnesota Vikings? Because I have been perusing the power rankings, and I got to be honest, I don't get too worked up about power rankings. But when I see the Vikings seventh, eighth, I'm kind of thinking, what are power rankings supposed to be? Because you couldn't be much more powerful than running San Francisco, Houston, and largely Green Bay out of the building in the three last games that you've played. This is entirely them not getting ranked number one or two based on who is their quarterback, because everything else, the way Jefferson's playing, getting Jordan Addison back, and he reintroduces himself immediately by annihilating a dude for a touchdown. And then the defense, aside from, well, they didn't get much help with with a strip sack at the 20 and a punt return that flies through a guy's fingers. Jalen Naylor, it's not a baseball. You don't have to go back and catch it. You can let it go. But aside from that, they got worn down at the end of that game. A couple of amazing passes and catches. But aside from that, they are the number one defense in expected points added. They're the number one team in DVOA, which is another kind of analytic stat. Where would you have them at the moment?
I think I'd have them probably 3. I think it's hard for me to surpass them with the Chiefs right now. I think the Chiefs for me are the clear number 1 spot. And then maybe it's just because I watched that game last night, but Detroit's still right there when they're clicking offensively and defense. I know defensively didn't look great last night, but when that offense is clicking like that and you're hitting Williams for long passes and Amon-Ra St. Brown and for the underneath stuff, and then you have who wants to score, Montgomery or Gibbs? Who wants, like, flip a coin on the sideline when we're inside the 5-yard line? One of you two is going to score. That team, when they can operate like that with that Dan Campbell team, is probably 2. And then I have the Vikings right there at 3 and Tampa probably right there at 4.
Yeah, I mean, Tampa being 3-1, I think that it would be almost hypocritical if I looked at them and said, I don't know, their quarterback is Mayfield, and then went, but Sam Darnold will be just fine the rest of the season. He's going to keep doing that. That doesn't seem quite right. And San Francisco does belong on this list right up with the Vikings, because at full strength, San Francisco has the talent to go back to the Super Bowl. It's just, at what point exactly do we expect them to be at full strength? Because George Kittle is hurt a lot. Deebo Samuel's hurt a lot. Trent Williams is coming back and is banged up and hasn't been exactly the same. And then Christian McCaffrey has bilateral
No legs.
something really bad sounding. And what? I don't know that he's going to be back at all for this entire season. So they're not exactly the same team around him, which, because the Vikings are healthy, it makes me want to put the Vikings ahead of them. But let's talk about what parts you think are sustainable and what are not sustainable, and begin with Mr. Quarterback, Sam Darnold. How much of his play, or what parts of his performance, in your mind, are the most sustainable and the ones where you would say this might not be something he can continue to do?
I think the most sustainable, as weirdly as it is to say, is the deep ball. I think that his accuracy on the deep ball shots, the receiving core in which we have with Addison, Naylor, and Jefferson, and their playmaking ability to go up and get the football and yards after catch type stuff, I don't see that going away anytime soon, because he is insanely talented. There's a reason he was a top 5 pick, right? It's not like he just lucked into that and then he got in the NFL and was like, oh, this guy sucks, right? Like he was on 2 dumpster fire type organizational times in the Giants and the Carolina Panthers. And then he gets
Jets,
here.
yes, Jets.
Jets, excuse me. I mean, pick or choose, flip a
Doesn't
coin.
matter, same
Yeah,
thing.
flip a coin. They both didn't score touchdowns this weekend, and you start going through there and you're seeing this on display. And I'm like, man, I'm starting to remember him doing this in college a little bit too. And so that's in his MO. So I think that's completely sustainable for a long time in the future here until defenses want to completely take it away. And I don't think it'll be anything that he does. I think you'll maybe start seeing more of that too deep shell to try and take that away, and then he'll force him more into the intermediate stuff. The thing I don't know is sustainable is his decision making. Can the decision making continue to be on point for 17 weeks? I don't know. I think it could be, but if there's one thing I think that could go awry a little bit here, would be that he starts forcing some things because the safeties are taking away, and now it's more the intermediate, and I have to find the window, I have to find the matchup, and can his decision making continue to be elite as it has been the last 4 weeks?
The one thing that they do have going for them is that because Justin Jefferson exists, opponents have been playing the too deep against
Yep.
them. 2 years ago, they were playing it at the same rates that they're playing it league wide now. So this is something that, and we asked Kevin O'Connell about it, that when Mel Kiper said it should be banned, then
Oh my gosh. Still the most idiotic take I think I've ever heard in my entire life.
Mel, it's not baseball. It's not the shift. Although I will tell you, historically, there was a discussion once in the NFL in the 80s over whether they should ban zone defenses. Imagine how different that would be, kind of like the NBA did for a while there. But neither here nor there.
Funny.
The point just being that Kevin O'Connell spends his February, March, April in the lab looking at different ways to beat too high and shells and playing over the top and doubling Jefferson. And when you watch back on tape, it's really fun to see this game of where's Jefferson. Oh, he's in the backfield. Oh, he's motioning across. Oh, he's in a bunch with a tight end and a fullback or whatever, whatever it might be. He tries to get him away from a lot of the coverage. He also tries to get coverage indicators by moving Jefferson to different spots all the time. And I think that helps Darnold a ton. But to your point about the decision making, there were a few choices and a few snaps in that game that definitely made me go, if Sam Darnold does this repeatedly, then they will get burned at some point, because you're not always playing up 28-7 for the vast majority of the game. And now after that game, his turnover worthy play percentage was 18th in the league after that game, which is not great. I think it speaks to how good KOC is, how good Jefferson and Addison are, that they could have a game where he played a little shaky at times and still put up 31 points and be as good as they were. It speaks to the talent around him, and it can smooth out some of those rough patches, but they're on the way. And I think the biggest thing for sustainability is really just, can he work his way through when they do have a bad game, when they do have a rough patch, and like get out of that quickly? Because the thing that was really excellent about Kirk Cousins, he could have the worst game. We could all be talking about how the season's over. This guy is awful. This is the season, whatever, trade him to the moon. And then the next game, he'd throw for 340 and 3 touchdowns and they'd win. You go, oh, okay, well, all right, he's back and they're back in the playoff race or something. I need to see that a little bit from Darnold at some point, how he responds from a punch in the mouth that will inevitably come.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is we've been saying that for 4 weeks now, right? When's it going to happen? Every week you're like, okay, this is the week. Lambeau, it's going to be crazy. Love's back. It's going to be a dogfight in it all the way to the fourth quarter. Then you jump up 28-0. You're like, I don't know if we're going to see the killer instinct that we need to see out of Sam Darnold this week. So it's just going to continue to be, and it's not fair to him. It's really not, to think there and be like, well, we need to see you win a close game. It's like, but we're blowing guys out. It's like, we need to see you win a close game until we can really sign off our stamp of approval on Sam Darnold. And it's like, I just keep blowing people out. Right. It's not fair to him by any stretch of the imagination, but it is the truth, because we all know the NFL. We all know the statistics that most games won't come down to win and losses by one score in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter. And we just want to feel the security blanket and the comfort that our guy can do that. And until he shows that he can, week 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it's just going to continue to be a question mark. I'd love for us to keep blowing guys out. It's just not going to continue to happen, I don't think.
Yeah, I think I'm taking it even a step farther, is wanting to see how he responds from a game where he's just not good.
Oh, just a
Um,
wreck.
yeah, because there will be one. I mean, there's always one. It's kind of like 2017, the game against Carolina for Case Keenum,
Yeah.
where he was just bad and they lost the game. And then I think the very next week was maybe Cincinnati
Mm-hmm.
and blow
Beat
them
the
out
tar out of
completely.
them.
Right, exactly. Although they thought their coach was getting fired before the game. That may have helped. A little mental warfare there. But the point just being that the really good quarterbacks in the league do have bad games, and you're not going to play 17 gems where you're blowing everyone out. So when you do lose a game, he has gotten into ruts before. I want to see him work out of a rut and make those adjustments. But I just think as we talk about the sustainability for Darnold, which part is supposed to fall apart around him? The way Aaron Jones is playing, the way the offensive line overall, not every person, but overall is playing, the way the defense is setting them up and giving them opportunities. There's no other part around him, including the coaching, that I look at and go, yeah, well, that's going to get him eventually. It's like, I don't know what that is. And they're getting Hawkinson back here soon.
Yeah, the one thing that could maybe derail is some injuries, but that's every week in and out is a evolving thing. But I'm excited to see Hawk get added back into this, and he's not going to be full speed right away. But man, talk about, I think we forget how much of a weapon he was last year. To really look back at the way he was able to be that security blanket for Kirk. Every quarterback loves a big friendly tight end. They just do. I mean, oh, everything's covered. Where's that big guy? Okay, throw it up and high, and he's going to box out the safety and give me a nice 8-yard hitch route right over the middle here. And Josh Oliver's done a fine job, and Johnny Munt and all those guys, but they're just not as gifted as Hawkinson is of route running and getting open and yards after the catch. So that's going to be an added piece to it. And it's hard for me. I'm in complete agreement with you. When you try and poke holes in, okay, what's going to be the bottom that falls out, it kind of defaults to Sam Darnold, right? Like I don't think Aaron Jones is going to have this giant fall off. I don't think Jefferson's going to fall off. I could see maybe a couple guys up front getting hurt and some pressure coming and getting to Sam a little bit more. Maybe that's it, because he stayed pretty clean for the majority of this first quarter of the season. And that's a big piece for his success, in my opinion, as well. So maybe that's what happens, is he starts getting some guys up front, but I think it's going to be an internal factor with Sam Darnold before an external factor derails this.
And even then, you have Dalton Reisner coming back, who is a better guard than the guy who's starting. And at the tackle position, one of the best swing tackles, I think, in the league, and David Quessenberry. They really have improved the depth on this team massively over the last couple of years, which is built to, they lose Ivan Pace. Kamu Grugier-Hill has played thousands of snaps in the NFL. I don't have the number, but a lot as a starter and special teams player. He comes in and he's just out there playing like Luke Kuechly, picking off passes and stuff. Like, okay, well, the cornerbacks are part of it as far as like their sustainability. They did get lit up a little bit in this game. And then if there are injuries, that will be tougher at that position. But as it pertains to Darnold, I want your assessment on the coaching from Kevin O'Connell, because I think that they are 2 or 3 handoffs away in the right spots for us talking about a 38-14 win, and just it's a party versus the 2-point win that they actually left Lambeau with. At the same time, they score 31 with Sam Darnold and receivers are running open. But I do think with Kevin O'Connell, there is a delicate line to walk now. If you're going to be playing with leads and you're going to be playing in these games that are important, it's no longer, hey, we got to just do things to show Sam we believe in him. You got to do the best thing to make sure that you don't put your team in harm's way of turning the ball over and giving momentum back to the other team. Because if you do, you can mess around and find out.
Yeah, well, we've all known it, and you and I talk about it quite often. He has that voice in the back of his head that just never stops talking. That's just like, throw it, keep throwing it. And he might fight it for a little bit, but eventually that loud voice just keeps going. And I think he fell into that trap this week. I think he fell into that trap of, I schemed this up so great in the lab on Wednesday afternoon when I was in my board by myself eating lunch, and I saw it and it was there, and I drew it like, I know it's the third quarter, we have a giant lead, but we have to run this play, right? Because then this team in front of us is going to think about it, and like he starts spiraling out of control with why he needs to get these run play or pass plays going, and forgets that Ty Chandler and Aaron Jones are really good running backs and very efficient run blockers up front have this year have been. And Josh Oliver is a very good run blocking tight end. Utilize those guys. Utilize those guys. Let them go and let that open up some more in the passing game instead of trying to force some of that pass stuff in there. Because I agree with you. You run the football a little bit more, milk the clock a little bit more. This game shouldn't even have been close. Like it should not even have been in consideration. You get a 28-point lead on someone in the NFL when you're as talented as the Minnesota Vikings are. You should never let them come back within a one-score game, ever. It should never, ever happen strictly off of game management type of stuff.
Well, right, because there's just not enough
Not enough
time to be able to
time.
do that. And if you stop the clock yourself by throwing incompletions or give up turnovers by throwing interceptions or getting strip sacked, this is why that old saying, what was it? You pass to score, you run to win. And I know that it's maybe a little like over the top to just say, can you dial it back to like 1994 real quick when you're up by 28? It's a weird criticism almost because you're saying, do you know how to manage well up 28? What is wrong with you? You know, like for the coach who got them up by 28 points. But I think that this will apply to closer contests in the future where it isn't just, hey, protect this huge lead and don't let them come back. But far too many times in 2022, when they had all of those one score wins, there were games against Arizona, against Chicago, where they needed last minute stops at the final. They needed Danielle Hunter to sack somebody on the final play or something just to survive. And I think some of that was the same kind of deal. This over leaning on the quarterback when you need to also let everyone else help the quarterback. And it wasn't just running. Ty Chandler played 8 snaps. Come on, man. Like you can't have Ty Chandler playing 8 snaps. He's just too good. You need to throw him a swing pass. Justin Jefferson is probably the best everything in the NFL pertaining to receiver. He went a long time without a catch, and it was only when they were like, oh no, where the Packers are back, we need to throw it to Jefferson again. Larry Fitzgerald is like the king of this. You need like an 8-yard little route to just get a first down or just keep the sticks moving. He would catch 97% of those. Just get open, a little quick little route. Let Jefferson do quick underneath stuff, a little in and out. The other team is terrified of him. They're going to give him everything that's 8 yards. When you're winning, I do think there needs to be a real focus on how to close a game out, because when you're up by 28, you can screw around and get away with it. When you're up by 10 in the third quarter against a Detroit or someone, they're going to make you pay for it if you do stuff like this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It just comes down to understanding situational football, which I think KOC does. And listen, he's human, right? We all talked about how Darnold's going to have a bad game. KOC might just had a bad game. Like it happens, but the really good coaches and KOC, I've heard his press conferences. He's very good at pointing the thumb, not the finger. I think he's a really good job of a self-evaluator. He probably went back and looked and go, I made some really bad calls. Like I made some bonehead calls. I made some things that cost my football team a chance to win that game. And I expect him to continue to learn from that as long as he can quiet that inner voice that yells throw it all the time, because the former quarterback in him, like as long as he can quiet stuff, I have full faith that he's gonna be able to bounce back and do those things, because we're gonna need the game management side of this, because as great as our defense is, it doesn't matter who you are. You're out on the field as much as our defense was in the second half. Even if you're the 85 Bears, you're going to tire out. You're going to get wore out. You're going to be tired of running up and down. And the offense is in tempo and they're going like it just wears a defense down. So the game management piece of this is going to be extremely important as we continue through this young season.
Okay, I have a better question in a moment, but I need you to do this for me. Let's say it's 3rd and 1 at the 3-yard line. Draw me up a play. Tell me what they should do there,
Yeah.
because I know the answer is not pitch it wide.
No. You go 12 personnel, right? You get 2 tight ends. You go a wing set to the left. The wing set to the left. So you've got Johnny and Josh Oliver right next to Christian Darrisaw, Blake Brandel, and you run duo. You have double teams on the front side, and if it's an over front, you're going to have a double team with Brandel and Darisaw. If it's an under front, you're going to have a double team with Oliver and Darisaw. Common denominator here, Darisaw. And you hand it off, and you do that 2 times in a row, and you find yourself in the end zone. If you don't score on the first one, you'll score on the second one.
And there you have it. It doesn't have to be complicated. It truly does not. Um, this is very much, I have felt almost silly because of how good they've been. And the coaching is an A plus so far. But when that happens, and you're right that O'Connell did criticize himself, and so did Brian Flores today. Both of them were like, hey, this is a bit of a wake up call in that second half, that we're not just going to cruise to these victories, that teams will take advantage if we make our mistakes. Now, you were present for 2 quarterbacks who everyone went, oh, this guy's playing good at football, in 2016 with Sam Bradford and 2017 with Case Keenum. Does either situation remind you of what is happening at the moment with Sam Darnold?
Little bit with Bradford, just because I can remember the Bradford when he first showed up, realizing how talented he was. Right? When Bradford went out there against Green Bay in I think it was 16. Week 2, and just lit it on fire. Right? Just lit. I mean, the whole field just was Sam Bradford just gassing it up. I can remember standing there going, yeah, I remember why you were so damn good. Right? And I think that's a little bit of the Darnold piece to it, is he was a stud in college. I mean, an absolute stud. And listen, Bradford had a lot more success early on in his career before he had the injury bug. But I think it's a little bit more Bradford, because you see the natural quarterback talent in Darnold that was similar to the Bradford type stuff. And once you get going with that, you tell yourself as a player when you're on those teams, like, this guy's going to give us a chance to win every game. He's talented enough that if we do our job as the 10 guys around him, he will give us a chance to win every game. And I can remember that was the factor going into 2016. Now, we just didn't have a great supporting cast around him at times, but this cast now, the 2024 Minnesota Vikings, is much more talented on offense than we were in 2016, not even close. And I think that is where I see more of the comparison, versus I think Keenum just kind of caught lightning in a bottle. I think he did. I love Case. Great guy. And he's made a long career off of 2017. Right? I think now he's in driving minivans and Progressive commercials. I mean, he's done a great job for himself, but I think that was a little bit more of a guy got hot at the right time and didn't have all the God-given ability that Bradford or Darnold or those guys had, but just took full advantage of the moment and went and made a bunch of money with Denver, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, it didn't. But the one thing that's similar to Keenum is that he didn't have the track record of winning. Because as you mentioned, Bradford did have some of that, rookie of the year, and then he had done pretty well the season before with Philly, and the natural talent. But the throw it up for grabs, the times that he scares you a little, Darnold had not scared me much through the first 3 games. And I thought, this guy's learned how to be a game manager with a cannon. Like, that means you're just a great quarterback. And then this last game, he rolls out to the left. He doesn't see a guy. He tries to fire it into a place where he shouldn't have just done anything there. And it's almost picked. And that's not good. He doesn't see the rusher come in. He does hold on to the ball a little longer than he should, trying to make things happen. Like when Nick Bosa hacked his hand and somehow he held on to it. You usually don't hang on to it. So there's been these little moments of, hey, you can't throw 2 red zone interceptions when you're about to put games away, no matter what. I don't care. And KOC, that's my bad. It's my bad call. Okay, but this is the man out there hucking the football into the wrong spots. You just, that can't happen. So there's a little bit of a combination of the two. Now, in one of those seasons, your squadron completely fell apart and had one of the biggest collapses I've ever seen. And then the next year, as you recall, was the NFC Championship game. Which one is this? Like, what's the difference? What happened in 16 that they need to avoid? What happened in 17 that allowed the Case Keenum train to never fall off its rails?
I think here's what I'll say. In 16, as a player, we all knew we weren't 5-0 quality team. I mean, we all knew we got to 5-0. We were like, we've got them all fooled. We've done it, right? Like, we had so many injuries and people going down. And I mean, we lost our starting quarterback before the year, and Bradford's in there playing by the seat of his pants, and we lose our offensive coordinator. So as long as, the entire world doesn't fall apart underneath him, which goes back to our previous conversation of the supporting staff around him is A+. I can't say, and this isn't a knock on Norv or Mike or Tony or any of the guys that we had there on the coaching staff. It wasn't the staff that 2024 has. It just wasn't. And I think a lot of that too is because it's an offensive staff, right? Offensive head coach versus a defensive minded head coach. And so then 2017 rolls around and we got healthy, kinda. And then, but I felt like we had a more stability on the offensive coaching side with Shermer now there and Stefanski there and Tony and everyone there in kind of year 2 of that offense feeling really good about it. I think with KOC and the stability around him, I see this leaning more towards the 2017 side than the 2016 side, unless, of course, injuries kind of derail that.
Well, a big part of it too is that the 2017 offensive line largely stayed healthy until the very end,
Yep.
when Nick Easton got hurt, and that kind of sent things awry, and maybe bad decisions were also made for how to replace that. I don't mean to open up a wound there, but I don't understand why Mike Remmers was a left guard. I'm sorry.
Nope.
I
Yeah,
apologize.
that one still eats to me to this day. I won't lie to you. That conversation with Tony of, hey, we're gonna start Remmers and we're gonna put Rashad out at right tackle, like, sounds great. Okay, sure.
Didn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Anyhow, again, sorry for that. But well, at least it didn't cost you in the biggest. Well, it actually did. But I can't help myself.
Can I do a quick story real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I essentially get benched for the Saints game, right? Like, because I started against Chicago in week 17, and then we go into the playoffs, and they're like, "Hey, here's what we're gonna do. Like, and then I remember Tony told me, Sperano, he goes, "We're gonna need you at one point. We're gonna need you." And then it's quarter 4 against the Eagles. We're getting killed, and Pat Elflein snaps his ankle. Right. And so Joe Burgess has to move in. And I remember Tony looking at me like, told you we were going to need you. I was like, the season's over. Like, what? The season is over. Yeah, you need me to finish this game. Thank you. Like, I'm very glad you needed me because I had to go finish this game. And I just remember that conversation on the sideline, like, told you we were going to need you. I was like, yeah, for the next 8 minutes before I go to Cancun in 2 weeks. Thanks, Tony.
I also remember just Philadelphia Eagles fans being Eagles fans, that Elflein's family was in the stands. And I think they must have had Pat Elflein shirts or something. And they were yelling like, yeah, I'm glad your son got hurt or whatever. It's terrible. Terrible.
I have a client. So I don't know if you remember the game 2 weeks ago, Saints, when he decapitated
Devontae
Smith. That was my client. And he called me. He's like, I'm getting death threats. And I was like, you played Philly? And he's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, they're really not nice people. Just turn off your social media for the next couple of weeks, bud. Because I had people going back responding to my tweets from pre-draft that were like, you were a dirty player. Like, I hope he dies. Like, I hope he breaks his legs. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys are terrible. Just get a better hobby, Philly fans.
Yeah, it's the last year we had to have a press conference for Alexander Madison to request people not say racist things to him after playing Philly. So it is a different world out there. Anyway, to cycle back, the offensive line protected Case Keenum very well, including yourself throughout that season. And that is what is happening with Sam Darnold. The only way you could see it coming apart is if there are injuries on the O-line and they can't protect as well, because they have the weapons to get open down the field. I also want to say this, that with Sam Darnold, similarly to Sam Bradford, he came into a situation where it wasn't really his team. It was Teddy Bridgewater's team. This was kind of Kirk's team, and then JJ McCarthy's team to everybody in the outside world. With both gentlemen, I just can't say how impressed I've been with their professionalism. That Bradford came in and first day was like, all right, well, I guess I'm the guy. I guess I'm in charge. And I think that his natural cockiness is higher than Sam Darnold's. There was a confidence about Bradford that was unbreakable, which I don't know is the truth for Darnold. But we can't say enough how little ego he's shown through this whole thing. Every reporter is like, do you want to throw the Panthers under the bus? And he's like, no, I'm good. It's okay. I could have done things better. And isn't McCarthy really the starter and not you, you dweeb? He's like, no, I'm good. I love JJ McCarthy. We went golfing together, whatever. Like the way that he's handled everyone, the way that he's sort of been talked to through this whole thing, and the situation in general, I think has really been one of the reasons he's had so much success.
Yeah, and that just comes with the humbleness that the NFL gives you when things aren't going well. When the world is against you. I mean, I can imagine some of his tweets that he got weren't great throughout his career also, and nothing humbles you like losing in the NFL. And he's done a lot of that, unfortunately, in the places that he was at. So it's not surprising that that carried on, and sometimes that can crush a quarterback. I mean, you nailed it. There's a cockiness you have to play quarterback in the National Football League. You have to step out on that field and know that I am the guy. I am one of 32 people in the entire world that can do this job. And if you don't have that, you're toast. And so many young quarterbacks that get drafted early and go to really terrible teams because that's why they draft early and have not immediate success or really struggle out the initial, that edge that they have can completely go away. But I think Darnold's done a great job of channeling it in the proper way, not allowing it to crush his confidence as a person of who he is as a quarterback, but allowing it to humble him in a way of, hey, taking corrections, taking technique. Maybe I'm not as a refined product as I thought I was, and I can always get better. And going to a program and understanding, hey, I know that you paid me $10 million to come in here and play. You drafted a quarterback 9th overall, but that doesn't change how I'm going to approach everything. That doesn't mean I'm going to mope and I'm going to be upset and all that. It just continues to go about his work ethic. And those are the guys that are like Baker Mayfield and the guys that bounce around that have that great confidence in who they are and their ability, but are humble enough to learn and understand what it means to get better every single week in this league.
10th overall was JJ McCarthy. Remember, because Sean Payton
Oh, that's right.
mind bleeped the Vikings into moving up one spot
That's
to
right.
get a guy who averages 2.4 yards a carry in a victory last week. I'm sorry, for a pass attempt, but that's one of the funniest wins I've ever seen a quarterback get. Anyway, that was hilarious. I was only watching the box score, but I was like, -7 yards passing
At
at
half?
halftime. What? But to your point about the confidence of Sam Darnold, but also the willingness to look at himself, and he's changed some mechanics. And Kevin O'Connell was talking about this with his deep ball and some things that he had done to just improve his mechanics. And the other thing he talked about was watching Brock Purdy. Now imagine you're the number 3 overall pick and you go to another team as a backup quarterback. You've got to be like, Mr. Irrelevant. I'm better than this guy. And there's a lot of ego in pro sports. People would never believe it. But instead, he watched Brock Purdy and some lights went on there of, oh, I don't have to do everything. I can just get it to the playmakers and I don't have to try to scramble like crazy or throw it into a tight window or do everything on every play. I can just manage the game like Brock Purdy has a lot of success with. I think there's a humility to Sam Darnold to take that approach, to learn a lot from where he's been and what he's seen to get to this point that kills most quarterbacks' career, I think. Because I was listening to a podcast not too long ago with, I think it was Christian Hackenberg, and he was talking about how the Jets just didn't give him enough attention or something, and that's why he failed, and they didn't try to develop him. And I'm like, these are just excuses, right? And sorry, Christian Hackenberg, I'm sure you're a great guy, but when you listen to that, you go, oh, I get it. Like, I get why you failed, because you thought they were out to get you for some reason. And the fact that Sam Darnold has never taken that approach is the reason that he's still here.
Yeah. I love the fact that, I think that just comes with the pressure of being a first round quarterback versus Mr. Irrelevant, right? When you're a first round quarterback and you go to the Jets and they look at you like, fix the franchise, right? Fix us. We've been begging for a franchise quarterback and you're the guy. And here's the keys to the $1 billion car. Do not wreck it, but be really good. It just can add such a pressure to a player that if they don't have immediate success, everyone just is willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater and be like, "Oh, that's enough of that." Versus he watched Brock Purdy, who they were, hey, here's the Honda Civic, just keep it between the white lines, and we're going to be just fine. And had that success. It's a very similar situation for Darnold. The difference is, I would say that talent wise, Sam Darnold probably has a better arm than Brock Purdy. And I
Oh yeah.
don't know if decision making wise, it's probably a toss up. I mean, Purdy's doing a lot better this year than he was last year with decision making. But to have the humble heart as the what was he, the third overall pick or the second?
Third.
The third overall pick, to have the humble heart to watch something like that and put it into your game is that's a true professional. That's a true professional in this league, which there are not enough of for young players that are used to being the guy and always being the guy, to be able to truly self-reflect and look at as an undrafted free agent. Because when you bounce around like a quarterback like he is, you're no longer looked at on a team as the guy. You're kind of looked at as the undrafted free agent that came in as the backup. And how do you learn? Well, how do you get back on the field? You watch the starters. You watch the starters. How do I always, that's what I did. I mean, when I got into San Diego and I was an undrafted guy, I was like, I want to be like King Dunlap and I want to be like Nick Hardwick and DJ Fluker. And I studied them and watched the way they prepared and watched the way they practiced and watched their pregame routines and just watched them and modeled some of my game after all those guys to make myself into the player I was. And Sam, having the mentality, is he got to watch some of those guys, and I'm sure him and Baker probably talked quite a bit like, gosh, aren't you glad we're not in Charlotte anymore? Like, and to talk about some of the trials that they had together to work through and what he's doing and how he's doing it, and talk through it, and just being willing to ask for help. That's the thing. Willing to ask for help and being willing to learn is so important in the game of football.
It's such an interesting story to see someone go through all that, come back on the other side, and be now on a team that has a good case for being the best in the NFL. And I think that someday Sam Darnold will do somebody's podcasts or something, maybe this one, and he will tell all the tales. But I really respect that he's not doing it now. That he is avoiding any of that. Told you so. I showed, somebody asked him about the doubters, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I've just got nothing for anybody like that. That he hasn't played into that, hey, like, look at me, I'm back type of narrative that we see. And the universe is so much built now in sports about just look at me, my social media, my following, my playing time. Every kid's got his own coach and everything else. And I'm not saying that that is inherently bad, but to take more of an unselfish and humble approach has been really impressive. And to not do, everybody wants to dunk on everybody on social media. It's fun. Like, you should try it someday, but it'd be very bad for him to do that now, right? And so the fact
Yes.
that he hasn't, I think, is a good thing. How many wins is this team going to end up with, though?
I
16
think
at least?
I'm going to say 12.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with 12 right now, and I would have to do a lot more dive deep into the schedule to really look at it. But from what I remember us breaking it down before the year, I mean, we were saying this could be an 8-win football team before the year. I think they're easily a 4-win better team. Shoot, they have 4 more wins right now than I thought. I mean, I thought they could easily start the year looking at that schedule. You're going Houston, Niners, Green Bay, like that's a 1-4 start looking like, or 1-3 start looking down the gun of the barrel. And you flip that around, you're going, okay, this definitely looks like it could be a 11, 12 win type of football team.
All right, let's finish on this, because last night Manny Hill and I were picking the schedule, and he came up with 12, and it just doesn't sound ridiculous. I had him at 9 before the season was the official Purple Insider prediction, because I thought that the Vegas side of it was forgetting maybe how many veterans that they scored or that they signed, and were only focusing on the quarterback and not enough of the rest, including the coaching. But they're in a situation to blow away 9 at this point, and I think it's okay to raise that bar up to at least double digits, if not beyond. Love to see it, hate to see it. What have you got for us?
Yeah, my biggest hate to see it is Rashee Rice getting blown out by Patrick Mahomes on his knee. It just such a fluke play, such a weird deal. And, he was having a great start to the year, looked like he was emerging as the true wide receiver 1 for Mahomes. And to see him go down like that as a young player, I hated to see that for him. And you knew immediately the way he was grabbing his head on the sideline and stuff. I mean, I've torn an ACL, I've torn ligaments. You feel that pop inside your body, and you're like, that's going to be a 6 to 8 monther right there. And so just I hate to see that for him and the young player, because he's going to be back, but I just really hate to see that.
Love to see it for me is Georgia and Alabama and the way that that game played out. College football has blessed us each Saturday with ridiculousness and upsets and everything else. But every once in a while, you just got to have greatness versus greatness. Freshmen who are 17 years old who look like Percy Harvin out there making plays. Jalen Milroe all of a sudden looks like a real quarterback developing there. Those two teams are going to play each other again, and I cannot wait for that. That was spectacular collegiate football.
Yeah, I mean, the arguably two of the best receivers in college football right now are true freshmen. The kid out of Ohio State and the kid out of Bama are making just insane grabs and speed. And it's like, you're 17? Like, I still had like baby fat on my face and like gangly, and like these kids are out there putting seniors on skates. So, yeah, college football has been absolutely incredible to watch. I love to see it for me is I feel like every time I open up my Twitter feed, there's another team talking about how they're going to trade for Devontae Adams and how he's the perfect fit for the Jets, the Chiefs, the Bengals. Like, it's just like I feel like everything's going, and then like Antonio Pierce liked Instagram photo that said that this was his last snaps as a Raider. Like, the saga of the trade deadline is coming, and I love the ridiculous speculation that comes before a trade deadline where everyone on every team is like, this three-way trade could work and we'll move it here. But yeah, the Devontae Adams saga and the Raiders is something I'm very enjoying watching on social media.
You know, it sort of reminds me with Devontae Adams leaving Green Bay as like you never got over your high school crush or something. And then you're like, you know what? I'm leaving the wife and kids and I'm going back to her and we're going to live the dream. And then you go back and she has a bad job and she just think that is a nightmare to be around. She's totally different than you remember from high school. Like, oh man, I didn't just meet up with her. I left the family
Yeah.
for her. and now we like take me back, anyone around the league. It's unfortunate for him that team is a disaster, but also not exactly unpredictable that would not have been the best situation to go to. A very sarcastic, hate to see it, is the Cleveland Browns offense, though, which is putrid, might be overly polite. And I just remember, I'm just going to throw this out there, that when I went to those joint practices, I went on Cleveland radio and they asked me, oh, what do you think of Cleveland's offense? I said, are you serious? It's awful. I'm like, you guys are going to be terrible on offense. The Vikings defense ran you out of your practice facility. And they got upset on Cleveland radio. They were bringing on other reporters from Cleveland to refute my report that their offense was bad. And so,
dunk on him.
Hey,
dunk on him, Matt. Dunk on him.
Not everybody knows how to watch a practice. That's all I'm saying. Not everybody. I've watched a lot of practice. Not everybody knows. Some people stand on the sideline. They just talk. They look around. They look at their phones. I watch, and I watched Deshaun Watson look lost back there. And guess what? He still does. And you're screwed, Cleveland. And oh, what a shame it is.
I feel bad.
Cleveland reporters, learn how to watch practice. That's all. That's all I want you to do. Just let me, actually, you can come to Minnesota and next summer and stand on the sideline with me, and I'll tell you what to watch for. That's what we can do.
I need your X's and O's book to drop. When's your playbook? The Matthew Coller Purple Insider Playbook Edition.
Look, it's not that hard to watch a camp. I mean, are they completing passes and looking like they know what they're doing, or would it have been a sack, like 2/3 of the drop back?
Did the DN run by him in practice and do a big dance, and then they complete a long one and everyone cheers? Like, no, he was dead. Like he was picking his teeth up out of his sand.
It seemed like they were coping, like that they were trying to hope it into existence that it wouldn't be as bad as it is. But this man's career is over, Deshaun Watson, and you just hate to see it.
I gotta love/hate to see it, and it's weirdly I don't love that players get hurt. I'm gonna preface this with that, but I do kind of love that Anthony Richardson, ever since he was talking about how easy it is to play in the NFL,
there it is,
another interception game, and is now hurt again from running too much again, and now Joe Flacco has to go in there and save the Indianapolis Colts because the NFL is not easy. It's never been easy. It never will be easy, especially as a quarterback position. The second you think it's easy, you're toast. You're done. Like the second you don't respect that head quarterback position and think, oh, this is easy because everyone's doing their job, you're done for. And Anthony Richardson's stat line is hilarious. If you look at it, it is hysterical. But NFL's not easy, bud. And I hope you get healthy here soon because I don't want you to be hurt. But maybe don't put yourself out there like that next time.
I feel the show has grown very petty here at the end. And that's okay.
That conversation, it just ate at me. Like watching that podcast and listening to him talk about how easy it is compared to college and all stuff. I was like, you're asking for problems, man, because it's not. Nothing about this job is easy.
No, it is not. That was a mistake on his part. The only thing that I wanted to forgive a little is that his Florida team was really badly coached and had very few good players. And so maybe what he was getting at is, we have good players. They're open. We have good coaches, but he didn't really clarify that. Anyway, do you think that they will go to London and beat the New York Jets?
Yes. Mostly because you talk about putrid Cleveland. It's not super far off to talk about the Jets offense either. I mean, that game was maybe the most atrocious game I've watched, except for I did go to the Giants Patriots game last year and had to watch that in person. So I don't understand what's happening in New York. I thought they were going to make a corner turn this year. I thought this was going to be the year Rodgers and Garrett Wilson get going again and figured out Breece Hall was like the next guy and that defense is still really good and everything going on. And then you got the Hassan Riddick saga happening, but that offense just cannot get out of their own way. Aaron Rodgers cannot get on the same page with anyone but Alan Lazard, and it's just not good. And I think that Brian Flores puts him in a blender.
Another difficult thing to watch for all of us emotionally. Aaron Rodgers struggling. What a shame. But Rodgers, I go back to just looking at him in the offseason and him deciding that minicamp wasn't worth it. But the body, it's just not. He's got a little bit of the same arm that flashes and he'll make a great throw and everyone will tweet it out. But this dude weighs 20 pounds less than he did at his peak, and I don't think he can move very well. So they're going to throw a lot of stuff at them. Their offensive line is also completely lost.
Good.
Right? They don't know what he's calling. They don't understand this cadence. They don't know what he's doing. This should be a Vikings win. The only thing is it's in London, so it can get weird over there. But
yeah, I mean, you've got Aaron Rodgers basically telling the head coach at post press conference, like, we don't need to change the snap counts. I don't know what that guy's talking about. And Robert Saleh's like, we should probably dial down on this. I was like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, it's over. It's week 4, and it's pretty much over in New York.
Well, we'll see if the Vikings can put the nail in Rodgers' coffin. Great to be back with you for Tuesday morning, Left Guard. It was the late afternoon when recorded, but that doesn't matter. So good day to you, Jeremiah, and we will talk next week when the Vikings are either 4-1 or 5-0. We'll see.
5-0. Let's do it.
5-0. Football.